Okay, great. So we were talking about like Pascal's wager and specifically about like moral odds swamping
Yeah.
prudential. And I suppose now we can talk about like what did you think of Liz Jackson's paper? Yeah.
So the paper you're talking about is the one about epistemic permissivism.
Yes.
And Pascal's wager.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't have any super firm views on it. I read it a while ago. I don't have any views set in stone about doxastic voluntarism versus doxastic involuntarism, and about whether there are cases where it's permissible to form one belief over another, and for another person to form the opposite belief when they're looking at the same set of evidence. There are some examples in the paper, or at least that she's given, I can't remember if they were in the paper, that didn't seem super compelling. So the example of the jury where the jury sees the same evidence and the jurors come to different decisions. If the claim is there that they're both equally rational, I don't know what to say about that. I imagine they're probably not. One of them is probably being more rational than the others in that case, where the evidence is so complicated. But there were examples where it seemed really plausible, both that it could be permissible to form either belief, A or B, because the evidence doesn't determine it, and also that it would be possible to choose to believe either thing. So the example she gives is of a new person comes and works at your place of work, and they give you some reason to think that they're kind of nasty, like they give you a shady look or something, or you interpret it to be a cold or shady look. And so you immediately form the belief that they're not a nice person. But then you reflect and you're like, hey, I don't know that this is a bad person. And if I believe that they're a bad person, I'm more likely to be cold towards them myself. And so for the sake of everyone getting on, I should choose to believe that this person is a nice person until the evidence really forces me to believe otherwise. It seems in that case, you could be rational in believing either thing, and that it would be possible to choose your belief. Although I'm more confident that you'd be able to choose your belief than that it would be rational to form a belief. In that case, just epistemically rational. I'm less sold on that, but I'm more sold on the premise that you could voluntarily control your belief in that case.
Okay. So a while ago, Amos, you said like Pascal's wager is like somewhat convincing to you, right? Like
yeah, it is.
So which version of a Christian are you? Are you a Christian?
I'm not. So I'm at the tricky stage where I'm just kind of weighing my options. I think, unlike Lenny in the example I gave earlier, it would be bad to just immediately dive in headfirst into a religious tradition. I think these things need to be approached with caution, and so I need to really think about religions one at a time. And I really am like I'm not a Christian believer at the moment. I'm pretty open to Christianity. I'm talking with some Mormons tomorrow. They're going to swing by my college and we're going to have coffee. Yeah, so I don't have any religious commitments at the moment, but I'm looking for them. If anyone has any tips about how to take Pascal's wager, someone in my permission, those would be gratefully received in the comments.
If the particular religion that you take in, like when it comes to like LGBTQ plus people, right?
Yeah.
Generally, I support like their rights. So I mean, to me, I don't think like God punishes people for a victimless crime.
Yeah.
That's my view. Like,
so if there were a retributive punishment for consensual gay sex,
or something like that,
right,
then I think if there is like that, then I think that God is like immoral. If he's giving that punishment to, So do you think that, like, do you think you would subscribe to a religion where they say like, yeah, if you engage in that activity, then you will suffer or be always in like second-class citizenship forever?
So like I said before, I'm very not attracted to models of hell that are retributive and infinitely so because you've sinned against an infinite God. As far as it being plausible that a perfectly good God and an all-knowing God prohibits or just issues a command prohibiting homosexuality. So I'm not a natural law theorist, so I'm not very persuaded by those kinds of proper function-based arguments against homosexuality. So I'm not persuaded by arguments that homosexuality is intrinsically wrong. I mean, I think the strongest argument along those lines is going to be the kind of one given by Alexander Proust in his book on sexual ethics. I've tried reading that. I always make it up to chapter 7, so I've read most of it about 3 times, but it always just I can never make it to the end, just because on every single page there's like a new argument that you could write an entire book about. I want to think about each one at a time. There are so many moving parts to his kind of argument. Another kind of argument you could give is the kind of argument that Richard Swinburne endorses. So I think he has a book called Revelation, and he talks about homosexuality in the chapter on Christian moral teaching. And so his argument is like, look, the natural law arguments fail. Homosexuality isn't intrinsically wrong, so there's nothing wrong with it in that sense. But there can be examples of things that aren't intrinsically wrong to do, but that it's permissible for God to prohibit for some unknown reason. So maybe God decides that your holy day of obligation is Sunday as opposed to Tuesday. Intrinsically, there's nothing special about Sunday, but just in virtue of the fact that God has picked it, everybody who is under God's authority is just obligated.
It's like divine command.
Yeah. And so it doesn't have to be full divine command theory. It would just be like in cases where it's not intrinsically right or wrong, God can just like make a regulation, and because he has authority, we have to follow it. The question would be, in that case, what are the reasons for prohibiting homosexuality? You can think of good reasons for why you prohibit not attending church on Sunday, just in terms of like regulating a good society, but it's harder to think of reasons why why you'd want to prohibit homosexuality. Richard Swinburne gives some reasons like that are incredibly speculative and lame based on his sort of reading of the very limited empirical literature on how well children fare under the parenthood of same-sex couples versus heterosexual couples. Nothing like that is very plausible. I think if you were taking a Richard Swinburne line, you'd have to just say it's for some unknowable reason. So God has just looked at the outcomes of the world where he prohibits homosexuality and the outcomes of the world where he does, and for some reason the world is going to be better if he prohibits homosexuality. Maybe it would have nothing to do with homosexuality at all. Maybe if God prohibits homosexuality, that sets off a causal chain that will eventually prevent World War III. And so the reason for prohibiting homosexuality has nothing to do with homosexuality at all. It's just to do with preventing this thing that will somehow result from a world in which homosexuality isn't prohibited. I think that's the most plausible kind of justification you could give.
Like the one which has like, say that one again, the most plausible to you?
Yeah, so the most plausible view is the one where homosexuality isn't intrinsically wrong, but God prohibits it. And the reason he prohibits it is because if enough people obey the prohibition, it prevents something unrelated to homosexuality, something really bad from happening sometime in the future.
Like,
So the example was World War III. If God does prohibit homosexuality, that will prevent World War III for some reason that we can't know, because we can't perceive the causal chains that lead from a certain number of people practicing homosexuality to World War III. But it will cause that, and so that's why God prohibits it.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, if it's for the consequentialist reasons, I would also say, if it led to like a disaster, enormous amount of suffering, or even a lot of suffering, even for that individual themselves, and I would say, don't do it, man. But yeah, I mean, in general, it seems to be like prohibiting people's freedom seems to me bad in general.
Yep.
Prohibiting.
Yeah, it is. And so but as a consequentialist, you concede that people's freedom can definitely always be limited if it maximizes utility. And my argument there doesn't necessarily rely on God being a total consequentialist. He can just be a moderate deontologist and say,
of course. I mean, I recognize that. I mean, if
World War III is so bad that we can violate these deontic constraints that we have to respect people's freedom.
Yeah, of course, that is possible.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I mean, it's like God could prevent World War III himself. You know, I mean,
but you know, he's got to balance all of these goods that he's trying to produce through free choices, right? And so it's hard to figure out how exactly he's going to do that just from the armchair, given how limited we are in space and time and knowledge and insight. I mean, like the fact that we can't see this causal chain and the fact that the hypothesis that I just floated that homosexuality might cause World War III is so bizarre that if that's the best justification we can give for the Christian teaching on homosexuality, then that will just trivially count as evidence against Christianity. But it's probably not enough to sink Christianity. Like,
of course,
it's not so crazy. Right, so I could be open to converting to a religion that prohibited homosexuality, and that would be the kind of justification that I'd be most likely to give if I found the religion convincing. I'd say, I don't know, but there's some reason homosexuality isn't intrinsically wrong, but there was some reason why God felt the need to prohibit it, and so everyone who falls under divine authority should comply.
Are you a consequentialist, by the way?
No, I'm not.
Moderate deontologist?
Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah, I suppose my view is also I think my view, I like to use consequentialism because like it seems to me moderate deontology does have like this important aspect of consequentialism, I suppose. I don't know. Yeah. So, and consequentialism can have like different theories of well-being, you know, like there's like objectivist, you know, objectivist theory, there's
desire satisfaction and then hedonic views.
Then there's also hybrid accounts of well-being, which is like Shelley Kagan would say, enjoying the good, right? Like a life of a hermit is great, it's good. Shelley Kagan would say that's great, good. But if the hermit like came to appreciate the like love, compassion, you know, friendship and stuff like that, then providing that hermit with those things are also good. So there could be like desert adjusted consequentialism. I have my view is like desert adjusted consequentialism. With like the theory of well-being or welfare to have like a pluralistic value. So like objectiveless theory. So I mean it is kind of like moderate deontology somewhat, you know. Still.
And so but like I say moderate deontology, I don't actually have a theory of normative ethics. I don't have any explanation as to why at a certain point something becomes wrong, because I don't believe in sort of absolute moral prohibitions just because of the problem of risk. But I don't have a theory. I just respond to individual cases, and in some cases it seems right.
Of course.
It seems right to pursue the good consequences, and in some cases it seems like it would be wrong to harvest the five people's organs to save the one person's organs to save the five. I don't have a theory for why that is. I just respect my intuitions on that, and maybe in 30 years I'll have a theory.
Do you know Matthew Edelstein?
Matthew
Edelstein. Have you heard of
him? He runs a deliberation under ideal conditions.
That's his channel. He's like a utilitarian. And I mean he's like hedonist about theory of well-being, and he just bites the bullet on like utility monster. So I'm like, you oppose eternal hell, right? But what if like God is like a utility monster? You know?
If God is a utility monster, get pleasure, which is only actualized by people going to hell.
Like I mean, if like Matthew is like hedonist, right? So God is like a utility monster in some sense, and limited in maybe his omnipotence is somewhat limited or something. And it seems like God can just do that. He can just do that, like, right? Like, because like the amount of pleasure outweighs pain. And like, I think he bites the bullet with that. And I think that's just, no, man, that's just too much, too much, you know, that's just
Yeah.
a bullet to bite. That is like big
Yeah.
to, you know, sink, you know, his whole view, in my view. Like, that's just a major bullet to bite.
I agree. I mean, I'm worried about those cases for utilitarianism. I'm more worried about the very concrete, down to earth cases that we encounter in real life. I mean, because I can appreciate the utilitarian point that when we're abstracting to something like a utility monster, it's really hard to get a grasp of just how great, how much utility that being would experience, and so our intuitions are going to be skewed. But I'm worried about really concrete, realistic, real life cases where utilitarianism gives you the wrong result, like a restaurant feeds pork to an Orthodox Jew because it's somehow profitable to do so, and nobody will ever find out, and the Orthodox Jew enjoys the pork. I think that's just clearly morally impermissible, but utilitarianism doesn't give you that result. So you just have to reject utilitarianism because of cases like that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose like if you have different theory of well-being, then utilitarian might give you intuitive answers with some of those.
Yeah.
Right. If you have like pure hedonism, then yeah. Right. Yeah. So another thing. So like we discussed Pascal's wager for a long time. It was too long. I wanted to talk about something lightweight now. Have you watched the movie Shawshank Redemption?
No. What happens?
Schindler's List?
A while ago, but I don't remember the plot.
Saving Private Ryan?
I think so. Yeah, I've definitely seen it, but again, it's been a while.
Like, what if, have you seen like there was a recent movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once?
No, haven't seen that.
You haven't seen that? That's like
Is that recommended?
Yeah, that's like a really magnificent movie, you know. Everything.
Okay, I'll watch it tonight.
Yeah, you should. It's a masterpiece, you know. By the way, I suppose our discussion is like nearing to its end.
Yeah.
Like, not much with like Pascal's wager anymore. Like I did think of like reviewing this paper with you of Liz Jackson and thought, nah, man, it take too long.
And because I'll probably agree with all of it. It won't be
probably
spicy content.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. Yeah. So, like, have you heard of, like, what bands do you love? Do you have any bands that you love? Music bands?
Yeah, Fever Dolls is my favorite band. Don't know if you've heard of that, but it's very, very good.
Is it like what kind of genre?
Sort of, it's weird. It's not pop, but it's not indie. It's somewhere between those, like rock, pop, and indie. If they like crossed over, it would be that. It's a weird genre. All of their songs are kind of different from one another, so it's hard to give them a label. What's your favorite band?
Mine is, I mean, I have lots of favorite bands, you know. So, like, at least right now, I'm listening to like Glass Animals, you know. Their song Heat Waves was like a big hit. Have you heard of like Heat Waves?
No.
You have not?
No.
Okay, it's a good song. I recommend hearing them. Like it's pretty good. It's a pop song, pretty decent. You know. Do you love metal bands or anything? Or do you not love them screaming and stuff?
No, I mean the only metal I listen to is the intro to Ryan Mullins' podcast. I mean, that's where it ends for me.
So does the too much screaming and too much drums bother you with metal and stuff?
Yeah, I guess it does. I need to be made of stone and stuff for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes the screaming and drumming can be annoying sometimes.
Mhm.
Trying to listen to. Yeah. So we discuss like music, movies. Do you play video games?
No, I don't.
You don't?
Not at all. No, I've never.
Do you hate them or something?
I don't hate them. I've just never really been initiated. Like I figured at some point, I don't play video games. Why would I give myself this new hobby?
Okay, cool. That sounds cool, I suppose. I mean, I think it's like a thing in an objective list. You know, you should really play video games, you know. So yeah, yeah, I think yeah. Are there any other questions? By the way, do you have any questions for me?
No. Just I want to say thank you for the conversation. It's been great.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm going to end the recording now. By the way, stick around because I want to like hear
Okay. Yep.
feedback about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a second.
100%.
I'm going to stop the recording now. Okay. So